Let's now bring in motoring journalist and road safety advocate James Deakin for this discussion. He now joins us live via Zoom. It's a beautiful day. James, welcome to the show. Great seeing you again.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, James, road safety has been all over the news recently. We can talk about the NAIA SUV crash. We can talk about the SETEX bus accident. Right now, all of these issues are being highlighted, and some people are worried that maybe some of the changes proposed or maybe some of the legislation might be reactive rather than having a more long-term view. In your view, though, do these incidents highlight basically what our current road safety framework is at the moment?
Yes, I think it's very revealing. And I do also share the same concern that this is just reactive. I've been around the block more than once, as they say, and I've seen this happen over and over and over again. There's a public outcry, there's an outpouring of grief, an outpouring of emotions, and then it just disappears into nothing again. And that's where my concern lies. It's like, can we stop doing this same old game where we keep pretending that this is just the issue of the day, and then we move on to something else tomorrow or the next week? We need it. We owe it actually to the victims of these accidents to really do some serious change.
Mhm. Well, we saw the Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon propose a few more changes, including a mandatory drug testing for PUV drivers, as well as addressing the quality of some of the road safety measures, or at least some of the safety measures in the EN in particular, with the safety bollards there. When we talk about, let's go first about talk about the infrastructure in terms of road safety that we have, particularly the ones in NAIA. Do you feel that the quality is there, or it's just proof that maybe we should have a review of some of the measures that we are taking in terms of the infrastructure that we have out there in terms of road safety?
I call it more of a wake-up call. That's what I wrote yesterday in my piece. I think it's the final wake-up call that we should have, because if we don't take this one seriously, we're basically just playing a game of what you call like Russian relay on wheels. It's going to happen one day randomly to somebody you know, somebody you love, or it might even be you. When you talk about the infrastructure, these are all connected. Road safety is everybody's responsibility. So it's a matter of making sure that the infrastructure is safe, the licensing safe. There's so many components here that contribute to safer roads. More specifically to your point about the infrastructure in NAIA, yes, it's revealing that when you do see a situation like this, sadly, it's too late to realize that that is, I don't know if it was a contractor issue, whether it was what level the failure happened, whether it was deliberate or not. But we saw that that bollard had one job and it failed that job. And that is really the tragedy here. And then you can see this duplicated all around the country. So safety standards have to be consistent. We really have to look at all of our safety standards to make sure that we're giving the roads, the people, the best chance possible. Um, I also dislike the fact that we're very much into theater when it comes to safety and security, right? We tend to do this a lot. Like you go into a car park and they put the little mirror under your car and all this kind of jazz. Are they really checking? I mean, what are they really doing? Thankfully, NAIA removed that layer. But could you imagine how insulting it was before, where you would go through the car park and you had to go through a full security check and all these different things? But at the end of the day, your weakest link is those bollards. So do you see what I mean? You're only as strong as your weakest link. And that goes, I think, double as much in road safety, because you don't get second chances at these things. There are global standards for a reason. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to safety. The barriers, the bollards, the way we build our roads, the way we train our drivers. There's already a gold standard out there. What are we doing here that we're trying to do it differently? That's my frustration here.
Right.
It's no secret anymore how to do this.
Right. I want to
I
touch.
do. Sorry,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I also want to commend the fact that, I appreciate what Secretary Dizon is doing here. Um, you've got to start somewhere. I also understand his frustrations and his limitations as well. But when you talk about mandatory drug testing, is this just another lip service? Because we saw what happened with mandatory drug testing before. It just became another revenue raising scam for the people who were exploiting it. So what was happening are the innocent people were paying to, or where they were suffering because they were suffering the indignity of the whole thing. But the ones that were actually guilty were just paying it off. So it just became another layer of corruption. So as long as we're guaranteed that that doesn't happen again, then I think it's a good idea.
Now, it's interesting that you said that because I wanted to touch base on that. Paulo mentioned earlier that Secretary Dizon did say he will have mandatory drug testing for PUV drivers alongside them with shorter shifts and making sure that there's another driver beside them. But as a road safety advocate, and you also mentioned yourself, it may or may not be the answer. What are the qualities just a regular driver should have?
A regular driver should be very competent in not just the ability to operate the vehicle. That's just one layer of it. But driving is a skill you continue to hone for the rest of your life. And it's a responsibility. I think we need to reframe the way we look at the profession. I think that's a very big problem, is we treat it like the lowest skilled work. We treat it like minimum wage. It is minimum wage job. So how can there be any pride and integrity in the position when we keep demeaning it, when we keep saying, driver ka lang, ito lang. I mean, obviously, we're framing that position for the candidates that we're getting there. And then on top of that, we build the corruption into it. So we really have to rethink the way that we treat this. You wouldn't let a pilot fly your plane just, when he or she just got his license out of like spinning the wheel at Temu, online shopping or something like that. You would take that seriously. So why not this? I've said it before, and I don't mind being repetitive over this. A vehicle in the wrong hands is a weapon of mass destruction. Let's start treating it that way because it's too late when you see a grieving father grieving over his child. It's too late to talk about these things. We should be talking about them now. We should be implementing this because there are no second chances. This is as serious as it gets. It's life and death. And we're talking about the most democratized space on earth, our public roads. That's the one where we all share. So if anything's got to be treated equally, it's that.
Right.
James, you mentioned licenses, and lawmakers are now calling for a stricter process of granting the driver's license. Do you believe that the current driver education and licensing standards are sufficient, or is it time for an overhaul?
I think it's time for an overhaul. I have to commend the LTO for increasing it recently. I mean, it's become a little bit harder to get. I have an 18-year-old now who's about to get his license, and it's not as easy as the other two that went through before him. So there have been changes. So I do have to give credit where credit is due. But is it enough? I personally think no, because I think we need to do something more drastic because of the situation we're in. I know these things are easier said than done, but they start with ideas and then we build on them. I think we should start looking at perhaps maybe a way of treating this like independently, like getting some kind of using the technology like AI, maybe getting in some international bodies here to avoid the corruption. Because we're very capable here. Where we usually fall apart is the human element. We hit these barriers of these layers of corruption that creep into the system, that have been in the system for decades. This is the problem that we really need to root out. So it's not necessarily the system, it's how they exploit it. And this is what happens when there's money involved, when there's greed involved, when there are fixers involved. That's where I think the root of the problem is, not necessarily new policies. It's really, let's work with where are the cancers in the institutions that hand out these licenses. Let's be honest about it and let's tackle it head on. But where I feel my frustration is I've been working at this for over 25 years in the Philippines, road safety. I always see the same sort of roadblocks that we get. It's always these layers of, it's the elephant in the room. They know there's corruption there, but then they start talking about policies when they see, no, there's a group, there's a core cancer that spreads there. And those are the fixers, those are the people who exploit the system. That's what you really need to target, is that. Otherwise, everything else is just sort of gonna fall through the cracks.
You mentioned, you touched on a few points there, James. I want to go through a few of them first. You mentioned the policies. In light of some of these tragedies that we've seen many politicians, many legislators propose even more laws or new laws when it comes to addressing all these problems. But then my question to you would be, is it really a case of under legislation? Do we have enough laws, or is it really more about the implementation and the regulation that is present? Because there are rather, a lot of laws that at least on paper, are there. But then when we talk about the implementation, when we talk about, as you call, the human element, is that really the biggest issue and not necessarily new laws or lacking of laws for certain issues, especially when it comes to safety of PUVs or maybe even how people do get their licenses?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That I think that we're confusing it with trying to the appearance that we're doing something. Case in point, 2016, I think it was. This was triggered by the Don Mariano accident on the Skyway, if you recall that. I think that was around 2014, if I'm not mistaken, where the bus flew off the Skyway.
Yes.
And that prompted me. I was so moved by that, so affected by that, that I went on a campaign, like a single man campaign, demanding for electronic speed limiters on buses and trucks, which is done worldwide, and we already have a nationwide law about the speed of buses and trucks. So it was a matter of just digitally or electronically enforcing this law. Senator J.V. Harris picked up the cudgels and turned this into a law. So in 2016, it was passed as the Speed Limiters Act of 2016. That's almost 10 years ago, and there's still no implementing rules and regulations. It's basically not done. Same thing happens with the drunk driving laws. What happened to that? Well, we have it, we passed it. Where is it? So this is the theater that we really need to stop getting caught up in, because we have all these laws and then we introduce new ones. I think there should be a law saying that you cannot introduce a new law until all the previous laws have been complied with. Is that a fair law? Because this is what we're drowning in regulations, we're drowning in bureaucracy, and it's all just lip service. It's all theater. This is not the time for that. We're losing lives on the road. Innocent lives are being lost. If we treated this with anywhere near the same urgency that we treated something like COVID, we would probably have zero accidents on the road. And the irony is, I think we lose more people on the road than we ever did in COVID. This is a serious problem that we're just not putting the attention on. We just think that it's just a 1 week or 2 week hype after things like this happen, and then we go back to normal. That's what needs to change.
James, with all the accidents that have been happening, particularly the one along SCTEX, we are focusing on the drivers, getting drug tests for PUV drivers, shortening the driving hours for bus drivers, and also asking for a stricter process when releasing driver's licenses. But do you think that we should also have stricter measures now to make sure that the condition of these PUVs are good enough to keep the public safe before they are used out there on the roads?
Yes, that's another thing that we really need to step up. We also introduced the mandatory vehicle testing, but then that hit its own roadblocks as well because people protested with that. And the other side's not entirely guiltless there. What I mean by that is, remember when we had those comprehensive vehicle testings to renew your registration?
Yes.
And then what was happening there, people made huge investments into that as businesses, right? And they introduced this, but their vehicle equipment testing machines were far too sensitive, or they weren't calibrated properly. Brand new cars were failing. This shouldn't happen as well. These are problems that that was from the private sector side. So it really comes down to just being honest about what works and just sticking with it. We always tend to backpedal. We had the vehicle modernization or the jeepney modernization, but that keeps getting stalled. I mean, ever since I've been in the industry, we've been talking about jeepney modernization. This is 2 decades already, and it's still, there's always something. So we tend to pander politically, I'm guessing, to these groups because, malapit na yung election. Sige, wag na, let's just not poke that bear. I don't know what it is. That's not my area of expertise, the politics. But it seems pretty obvious to me and to people out there that we do hit these problems which have nothing to do with the solution. We're always sort of pandering either politically or some other form, but we're not really addressing the root cause of the problem. And the frustrating part about this is we know what needs to be done. Let's stop complicating it with strange new laws that we pass that never get implemented, or laws that get misinterpreted. For example, reckless imprudence. This is something that, for example, the driver in NAIA will be charged with. This
Yeah.
is the correct application of the law, reckless imprudence resulting in homicide in his case. But we've been applying this rule for any time, let's say, a motorcycle hits you, even if it's the motorcycle's fault. Pag namatay yan, kasalanan mo yan. You get locked up until you prove your innocence. So it's a weaponization almost of this law incorrectly that's just been accepted as fact. We remember that guy on the Skyway where the motorcycle came towards him on the Skyway and that motorcyclist died and he was charged with
Yeah.
reckless imprudence resulting in homicide. Something is terribly wrong with the system. That should not happen.
You know, James, we're going to have to wrap up in just a bit, but then first of all, thank you so much for all the insights so far. Right now, we're focusing on moving forward in the sense that, okay, if we're going to try and make changes and talk about what is most easily applicable without necessarily passing new legislation, obviously it's going to take effort from both public and private sector, as you mentioned a while ago, that there are some issues wherein both the public and the private sector are guilty of probably not keeping up the standard of whatever needs to be done in terms of road safety. What do you feel is the easiest point, or at least the best starting point, really, to try and improve road safety in general? Is it education? Is it more stringent measures when it comes to certain aspects of road safety? What is the first step in your mind, James?
I think first we need to start with driver education as early as while children are in school before they drive. We teach them how to use the road first as pedestrians, because that's the thing about the roads is everybody's a road user, regardless of what age, what sex, religion. We all share that road. That's why I say it's the most democratic form of space in any country. So we teach the children how to walk, how to cross the road properly, how to safely use the road as commuters, as passengers, and then eventually as drivers. So we start that early. We build that into the curriculum. Then we start maybe incentivizing companies to have road safety programs within their own companies. Like make it mandatory, or give them, if not mandatory, give them good incentives to be able to. Private companies are very compliant, so long as it makes sense for them. And road safety, there's also a monetary aspect to it. I mean, you could even appeal to that side of them rather than the humanitarian side. Just say, every time you have an accident, it's a bus company. We take your buses off the road for 30, 60, or 90 days. You want to avoid that by investing in proper training, right? Let's just appeal to somebody's self-interest instead of their humanity, compassion, guilt, or obligation. And maybe we might start getting things done. I think people will cooperate with that if they see a cohesive effort with the government. Why not? I mean, all these companies, let's face it, the private sectors are always looking for good PR angles. Let's spin it like that. I mean, if we have to, I hate to do that. I hate to sort of turn road safety in some kind of PR stunt. But if that's what needs to be done, just to be able to get it out there, I say let's do it. I mean, I built a career basically doing this, and my biggest challenge is road safety is not a sexy topic. It's not an exciting topic. My views go down when I post about road safety, but I do it out of this sheer connection that I have to the tragedies that I've seen out there. My brother runs Lifeline ambulance service. I've driven ambulances on the road just to immerse myself in what actually goes on out there. And I've seen firsthand, I've seen the carnage, and nothing will prepare you for having to explain to a family what happened to their loved one, because nobody ever expects a road accident. Nobody ever drove out that day going, I think today's the day where it's going to happen. No, that's the tragedy of road accidents. It is random. It happens in a split second, and it's life-changing for not just the person obviously in the accident, but the entire ecosystem around that person. This is why we got to take things seriously. What could be more serious than this? But yet we always just sort of, at the end of the day, turn a blind eye to it. So I just want to see a little bit more commitment. I want to see the driver education improved. I want to see if we have the drug testing, why don't we do also these spot drug testings like
Yeah.
they do for athletes? You know, you just turn up at the bus station and then you just start doing a random drug test. That's how we should be doing it as well. Because when you have these mandatory ones, we're going through the same machinery as we were before. They find the loopholes again.
Yeah.
You know, we need to close those loopholes because we've already seen them being exploited.
James, we could go on for hours
Yes, we
talking
could.
about this, but then we only have so much time. Really appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully get to talk to you
Anytime.
again soon.
Anytime, guys. Thank you for shining light on this topic. It's very important.
He's motoring journalist and road safety advocate James Deakin. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this morning.